Hello language learners! You guys know that I'm a huge fan of different language learning strategies for different people. But how do you know if your language strategy is working for you? What do you look for? So we know that we're not looking for specific apps or specific things like that. If we know that there isn't one language strategy for everybody and that not every app or book or habit or movie or whatever it is, we know that not one thing works for every language learner. What do we look for in our strategy to make sure that it's actually working for us and it's actually helping us? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 big things that you should be looking at to see, if your language strategy is working for you, or if you're really being motivated by something else that doesn't really matter in the long run. Of course, everything is totally subjective because everybody needs something different. Everybody's needs change over time. Everybody likes different things. So these 3 things are pretty general and pretty subjective for the most part, but keeping these 3 things in mind will really give you a good head start to understanding what to look for and how your language learning strategy should make you feel about yourself, your progress, and the goals that you're trying to hit. The first thing that we should be looking for in our language strategy, and this is like top of the list, like number 1 thing, is it making you happy? Do you enjoy your strategy? Does it bring you joy? And that isn't to say that it's not going to get frustrating over time. Things are going to get difficult. You're not going to struggle sometimes, because you absolutely will. And that's just a part of learning any new skill, including language learning. However, over the long term, consistently, day to day, for the most part, you should be enjoying what you're doing. It should make you happy. It should make you feel motivated. You should enjoy what you're doing, because if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to do it. Just general rule, basic rule of language learning. If you don't actually enjoy your language strategy and you are using your language strategy because somebody else told you to, because it sounds good, because something to do with marketing, because you paid a lot of money for a resource, if those are the things that are keeping you going, they're not going to last. What needs to happen is you need to make sure that you're enjoying what you're doing. Not only does this, make a logical sense, but making sure that we enjoy what we're doing also gives us some direction if we realize that we're not enjoying what we're doing. Because if we don't enjoy what we're doing and then we're not making our way towards our goals and we're not feeling good and confident about our language learning strategy, it's an easy fix, right? All we gotta do is find something that makes us happy, brings us joy, that we're doing things because it makes us happy, not because we feel obligated to or guilty or because we're stressing ourselves out over something, avoiding, not using this perfect resource or any number of things. If we look at our language strategy and think about whether or not we actually enjoy it, and then we realize that we don't enjoy it, and that is the reason why we're not actually making our way towards accomplishing our goals, then we can think about shifting our directions and being more intentional about our language learning strategy and making better decisions about what to do. And of course, like anything else, this will take some experimentation. This will take some trying different things. And then what you enjoy is going to change over time. It, really depends on where you are, where you're going, your interest in any given time of life, what your schedule looks like, the thing that you enjoy doing. For individual pieces of a language learning strategy, they'll change over time. Nothing is ever really consistent for the most part. As our skill grows, as our skills change, then we're certain things aren't going to make us happy anymore. Because if we get to an intermediate level, for example, the beginner stuff isn't going to make us happy. It's going to be boring. Same kind of thing, and vice versa. If we're a beginner and we're trying to do intermediate stuff like read news articles or watching Netflix, that's not going to make us happy because we're going to be confused, overwhelmed, frustrated, all sorts of things. But once we get to that level of the language, of comprehension, of the skill, then it'll be a lot more entertaining and we'll actually enjoy doing it because guess what? We understand it. So yes, although making sure our language learning strategy makes us happy sounds obvious when I say it out loud, a lot of us don't do that because, we have this understanding, we have this belief that unless we spend blood, sweat, and tears accomplishing something, we haven't earned it. That ain't the case. It's going to be the case sometimes because language learning isn't always easy, breezy, and convenient to accomplish and makes sense automatically. Sometimes it's going to be difficult, but it doesn't always have to be a struggle. And if it is always a struggle, it ain't going to work. you're not going to stick to it. You're going to give up. So make sure that you generally, for the most part, enjoy what you're doing. Language learning should be fun. Language learning is awesome and amazing and super fun. And we should really take advantage of how happy language learning can make us. The second thing that we need to look for in our language strategy is what goals that we are trying to accomplish, and making sure that we are working on the things that we need to actually work on in order to achieve our goals. This really goes back to a big problem that a lot of beginner language learners have, where they want to learn to speak a language, but in school they were taught to learn a language by memorizing vocabulary and grammar structures, and then they get frustrated when they can't speak. It's really as simple as, if you want to be able to speak, you need to practice speaking. Same sort of thing with, if you want to be able to read more books, you need to be reading more books. If you want to write a book, you need to be writing more. You need to actually be making sure that what it is that you want to accomplish, you are making your way towards that. You're not going to be able to read Don Quixote as a beginner, but for example, if you start out with beginner books, kids books, fairy tales, make your way up to like young adult, and then eventually Don Quixote, then that makes sense. It's got to be logical. But if you have a book full of 500 verbs and you want to speak, that's not going to help you speak. Learning the verbs, understanding the verbs, knowing how to conjugate them, knowing what they translate as, I mean, it's not unhelpful, but you need to speak. You're not going to read a book to learn how to speak. And while yes, everything that you learn in a language will help your ultimate goal, your eventual goal, what you want to accomplish in your language learning, you really got to make sure that you're not depending so much on, well, I'm at least working on the language, so I'll get there eventually. For example, if you want to read a medical book, but you're spending your time with vocabulary for travel and, being a tourist and traveling abroad for like a couple of weeks, that vocabulary, it doesn't really match up. That's not really going to help you achieve your goals. You have to be laser focused on what it is that you want to do, and make sure that you're building the appropriate skills. Now, that isn't to say that all language learning has to be 100% goal-oriented and focused on achieving a certain thing. However, if you're spending your time practicing skills and learning vocabulary that don't actually interest you and you're never going to use, and you don't actually want to learn them, and the only reason why you're learning that stuff is because somebody told you that you should, that's not going to work out. You're going to end up very frustrated, and you're going to spend a lot of your time working on things that don't actually benefit you and don't actually help bring you joy. So just like with the first point of making sure that you're happy, it doesn't matter which specific app, which specific book, what specific strategy that you're using to accomplish your goals. In the long run, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you make sure that you're practicing the skills that you actually want to develop. You're building the skills that you want, not just kind of haphazardly building random skills here and there because that's what somebody told you to do. Be aware of what it is that you want to accomplish in the language and build yourself up to that point. Promise you, if you do that, you're gonna be a whole lot happier than you are just kind of picking up random books and apps and resources and trying them out and giving up on them. If you make sure you know what it is that you want to learn, and then at least make the effort to learn those things, you're gonna feel a lot more on track. You're gonna feel a lot more confident in what it is that you're doing. You still might get a little bit excited about different resources that don't actually benefit what it is that you want to do. That might still happen, I'm not saying it won't, but having that clarity and being laser focused on what it is that you want to accomplish in your own language learning goals, not what somebody else wants to accomplish, what you want to accomplish, is going to make your language strategy a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable, and a lot more productive. And the third point that I have, the number 3 thing that we need to think about when it comes to what to look for in a language strategy is, are you being consistent? Now, this is a little bit more complex because consistency, first of all, consistency doesn't really have like an objective, it doesn't look this exact same way in everybody. For some people, consistency can mean studying every single day. For some people, consistency can mean having a conversation on italki twice a week. Sometimes that consistency looks like, writing in a journal once a week. Whatever consistency looks like to you, that is what you need in a language learning strategy. The big thing to understand here is that consistency doesn't necessarily mean every single day. It doesn't necessarily mean every other day. It doesn't necessarily mean a week, because consistency is not all about what you're doing every day. It's also about making sure that you're bringing that language back regularly, not leaving it dormant for months and months and months and months at a time. Because no matter how advanced you are in a language, if you don't touch it, don't see it, don't hear it, nothing, for 6 months, a year, that's gonna start fading away. So for my French, for example, my goal is to study 6 times a week, 6 to 7 times a week. And that is consistent for me because, you know, I'm touching it every day that I can. I give myself a break for when I get tired or stressed out or whatever. That's my, you know, back door in case something happens. But for the most part, I'm staying consistent. I'm poking at it regularly so the memories that I'm building in my mind stay alive. Meanwhile, with Spanish, I have no set expectations, routines to keep my Spanish consistent. However, I do usually touch it at least once or twice a week. It's not as strict, it's not as black and white rules for myself because I'm well aware of my ability in my Spanish and I know how fluid it is and I know what I need to do to make sure those memories don't fade away over time. And not only that, not only is consistency not necessarily about every day or even every other day, depending on what works for you and your language skills and what you're trying to accomplish, but it's also whether or not your language strategy is sustainable in your everyday life. Do you get too busy for your current language strategy? Do you not have the energy to be consistent with your strategy, you know, based on what your day looks like, when it is that you're studying, what you're studying? Are you depending on an expensive language app that you might not always be able to afford necessarily? Do you have some sort of backup plan in case what your primary strategy is just kind of doesn't work for, you know, temporarily? Consistency isn't about studying hardcore every single day. That's not what consistency is. Consistency is about feeling comfortable in the lifestyle of a language learner, in the lifestyle of somebody who is slowly but surely making their way towards their language goals in a way that's productive and efficient and works for them. And in a way that's, like I said, sustainable for your everyday life, your everyday routine, your lifestyle. These 3 things are really important for what to look for in a language strategy. And like I said, I know that they're very subjective, but language learning is subjective. Keep in mind, it's not necessarily a tangible black and white thing. And that, I think, scares a lot of us because we're used to taking a test in a Spanish class, for example, and getting a grade and saying, okay, I understand 89% of this content. I understand these conjugations 89%. A lot of us struggle with not having those tangible black and white grades. You know, we get stuck in grades a lot. But it's important to know that language learning is very subjective, and that's okay. We need to be easier on ourselves and be kinder to ourselves and not be so focused on tangibles and objective grades. Sometimes. If you need to take an exam for work or for school or something like that, then that's a different story. But everybody else, those tangibles, those objective grades, I feel like we prioritize them a lot more than we need to. Language learning, language as a whole is subjective. It shifts, it changes over time. Everybody uses it differently, so we need to be as flexible in our strategy and with ourselves as the language is. That is all I have for this video. In the comment section below, let me know, what do you look for in a language strategy? Do you agree on these 3 points, or is there something else that you look for in making sure that your strategy is working for you? Otherwise, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every Wednesday and Sunday. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.